Drage poslušalke, poslušalci, gledalke, gledalci, prav lepo pozdravljeni v novi epizodi vašega najljubšega jedrskega podcasta. Tokratna epizoda bo v angleščini, kajti naša gostja prihaja iz Združenih držav Amerike. To je Grace Stanke, Miss Amerike. Če se sprašujete, zakaj v jedrski podcast vabimo Miss Amerike, naj vam povem, da je Grace jedrska inženirka. V tokratni epizodi jo bom zato vprašala, oziroma nas bo zanimalo, zakaj se je pravzaprav odločila, da postane jedrska inženirka, kaj so tiste neki stereotipi, ki se nanašajo tako na ta svet lepotnih tekmovanj, kot tudi jedrske industrije. Prav tako pa me zanima, ali je že bila kdaj v Sloveniji. Če še ne, jo bomo seveda v tej epizodi povabili tudi k nam. Pa začnimo. Grace, thank you for joining us today. We are very excited to have you here and learn more about your amazing achievements. So first of all, how are you?
I am so good. You know, I had an early morning already. I was on a couple other calls with some folks from Europe. So I'm like, I am ready to go. I've already had my coffee. It's a good day. It's a good day. It's a good Monday.
Yes, I totally agree with you. I mean, I have never imagined, I will be hosting Miss America. And to be honest, I have never imagined Miss America to be a nuclear expert.
Oh my gosh. Well, me neither, in all honesty. I never really expected to see a nuclear engineer or anybody in that capacity becoming a Miss America, but I was really excited to have this opportunity to expand my platform as a nuclear advocate, but also to represent America and to talk about our energy grid. You know, that's something that needs to be addressed. Electricity is an increasingly more pressing issue globally, and it's been important to talk about it here in America, especially.
So being Miss America is your current full-time job?
Yeah,
right?
Correct. So I
what does that
travel
mean?
all over the country. Okay. I know, right? Like people, it's so interesting because people sometimes think that Miss America really is just a one-night competition, but
exactly.
We spend a week at the competition, and then whoever becomes Miss America, it is the full-time job. You know, I'm a paid employee, a paid contractor of the organization and everything. And then I travel the country, and actually I've had a lot of opportunities to do some international travel as Miss America. So I've put on about 200,000 miles in the past 11 months. So I've gotten my fair share of airports and everything.
I wanted to ask you how your usual day look like, but maybe I should ask you how your typical week look like.
Yes, I was going to say day, it's so different from day to day, but a week, I do every type of visit, ranging from talking to a kindergarten classroom all the way to visiting congressional offices, our political offices, all the way to like visiting nursing homes and doing educational talks there, to going to power plants and doing some like social media content and working with the current workforce to continue promoting mentorship and developing the next generation. So it's really incredible because as Miss America, I do like a little bit of everything, where I'm working with young people to get them excited about nuclear. I'm working with people in office to make sure nuclear is permitted essentially in America, like for lack of better words there, to make sure that it's supported properly by our government. But then also working with the current workforce to make sure we're providing mentorship and opportunities to the next generation so we can continue building our workforce.
Well, but nuclear, I must say, it's a very complex topic, especially if you're not a nuclear expert, and I'm not. So, there have been many arguments, or there still are many arguments for and against nuclear, I don't know, such as cost, reliability, security, sustainability, and as well social impact. How do you respond to critics and opponents of nuclear energy? What do you tell them?
Oh, well, it really depends on their approach. For me personally, I like to just get to know the person I'm talking to first, have a conversation, learn about their life, learn about their family, because everyone has different priorities, and almost like in a way appealing to those priorities is the best way to go about this discussion. So like here in America, sometimes the best approach that I can take with nuclear is talking about, okay, we're switching to a zero carbon energy grid and we need reliable energy. Well, great. Nuclear is the way to do that because it provides both reliable 24/7, 365 energy while also being zero carbon emissions, which is a huge appeal to people on one side of the political aisle. But on the other side, they don't care about emissions, right? They're like, okay, whatever, it is what it is. And that's completely fine. Then I talk about the cost and the investment that it takes to go into it and how it brings in millions of dollars of taxes into local communities. It provides several high-paying jobs, several hundreds to thousands of high-paying jobs for that local community. And it helps create that culture of just good like the good American work ethic, which is like, I feel like such a strange thing to say on a European podcast. But that's something that appeals to a lot of people. When it comes to the science and everything, you know, I take it on a case by case basis. I talk about the waste. I talk about in terms of cost. Let's talk about advanced reactors, because now, especially now, you're not seeing the same type of reactors that were built in the 70s and 80s. It's a completely different type of technology that's safer, that's better, that's more efficient, that's cheaper to build. Like, there's just so many cool things to talk about when it comes to the advanced reactors.
Okay, now I see why you've been crowned Miss America. I mean, you have so much passion for nuclear. I mean, how so? I mean, nuclear is usually not something that like girls decide to study.
Yeah, so the story of how I got into nuclear is I always say I have a really bad origin story. I don't have a good inspirational story. Basically, I was a 16-year-old teenage girl that had no idea what I wanted to do with my life, as most 16-year-old girls have no idea what they want to do with their life, right? And I was very fortunate that I always knew I wanted to do engineering. My dad was a civil engineer, so he would take us to construction sites growing up, and I loved seeing him use math and science to do good things for people and help them, you know, live their lives. I admired that, and I saw engineering as a way to pursue my passion for math and science. I liked math and science primarily because it's like, you're either right or you're wrong. There's no in between. And I love that. I'm a very brutal and direct person. And I find that, you know, science and math is also that same way, where it's direct, it's straight to the point. It's either right or wrong. So then from there, I knew I wanted to do engineering, but I had no idea what kind. And I was touring colleges, touring universities with my mom. I was still in high school, and I was looking at a list of engineering majors, and I was like, okay, mechanical. I'm like, that's too basic. You know, I'm like, everybody does mechanical. I can't do that. Looked at electrical. I'm like, my brother went into electrical. There is no way I'm following in his footsteps. Like, absolutely not. I look at civil. I'm like, my dad did that. They're dirt pushers. You know, I'm like, absolutely not doing it. And honestly, so this is not meant to like shade other majors. This is just the thought process of a 16-year-old teenage girl, right? And then I look at nuclear engineering, and I'm like, man, what a flex it would be to say I'm a nuclear engineer. Like, I was like, I don't know anybody that's a nuclear engineer.
But did you know
like,
what nuclear engineers do?
Absolutely not.
Exactly.
That's the whole thing. It's like, I mean, I had no idea.
Nobody knows, right?
Exactly. I had no idea what it was. I ended up going back home, and I was talking to my dad, and I was like, listen, Dad, I'm either thinking nuclear engineering or aerospace engineering, simply because they both just sounded really cool. And he looks at me and he goes, Grace, don't go into nuclear. There's no future there. Which, like, you know, honestly, 4 or 5 years ago, if I had known what I know now, but in that setting, I might have actually agreed with him. Nuclear was not in the same position that it is today in 2023 here in America. A lot has changed in those 4 to 5 years.
Like, what happened in these 5 years?
There wasn't a lot of push for new nuclear back then, I'd say. And now at this point in time, like, the best way I can talk about it, so the Nuclear Energy Institute, an advocacy organization here in America, talked about this and put it into perspective best. This year in 2023, at the federal level, from a policy standpoint, there have been over 200 bills proposed in support of nuclear, in support of building new nuclear, versus back in 2019, when I first started going into this, there was maybe a dozen. Like, there just wasn't the same level of broad support. Now, I think the big driving factor in changing that is here in America, we've had a big push for caring about climate change and caring about zero carbon energy. We also have had a lot of problems with reliable energy. You know, America is we're a spoiled country. Like, I'll say it, where we have access to our energy grid, and people want it, and they want it to always be accessible, and they always want electricity to be there. That's not the case in most other countries, which, you know, we're Americans. We don't really realize that. That's just how our culture is, unfortunately. And we've had some parts of the country where a deep freeze occurred in Texas, and a lot of the state lost access to power because of that, because they didn't have the preparation for a deep freeze, and some of their power plants were shut down. Because of that, I mean, 200 people died in that incident. without power, we don't know what to do. I'll admit it. If I don't have power, I could make it for like a week, maybe 2 weeks. And then I'd be like, all right, I don't know about this anymore. And same thing with California right now. Southern California, they're going through these rolling brownouts, what they call it, where basically they're told like, okay, you can't turn on your AC until 4 p.m. when you get back home from work. And like, it's such a little thing, but it's starting to affect the consumer directly now. And people in America, when it starts to affect their lives and their bubble that they live in, they start to get angry. And that's where I think we've seen this big change over the past 4 to 5 years, where people are starting to get affected personally by this lack of access to reliable energy. And they also care about climate change. Gen Z's big issue is climate change. And we're seeing that come to the front.
So you decided to study nuclear engineering despite the fact that nuclear wasn't popular at the time.
Well, I didn't know that at the time.
Okay.
I had no idea that nuclear was not popular.
So did you flip a coin?
Well, I basically, when my dad told me not to go into nuclear, as a 16-year-old teenage girl, my natural reaction was to go into it. It was to do the opposite of what my dad said.
You decided to study just because you were told not to. Okay.
Exactly. I was a spiteful little 16-year-old girl. But it's worked out really well because I always say, that's what got me into the field. But what kept me in it is that first semester in school, I learned so much about what nuclear has to offer, where it's powering 20% of America. On the nuclear medicine side, it actually helped save my dad's life twice from cancer. He's a 2-time cancer survivor. He's happy, healthy, retired today. Also one of the biggest pro-nuclear people I know now. But it's something that I learned where nuclear science exists all around us in smoke detectors, granite countertops, avocados, bananas, literally everywhere around us. Nuclear science is a part of our daily lives. We just didn't know it. And I didn't know that until that first semester in school. Once I learned that, I was like, okay, if this is all around us, why aren't we committing to it and using it fully, using that power of the atom for peaceful purposes for good?
Exactly. By the way, have you ever been called nuclear nerd?
I kind of donned that title on myself. I've been called a nerd. I don't think I've ever had anybody be like, wow, you're such a nuclear nerd without it being prompted or without knowing that. But I think it's a fun thing because I don't think being a nerd is a bad thing. I've always been super interested in learning, and I firmly believe to never stop learning. I think being curious is one of the best traits you can ever be. So because of that, I was typically called a nerd or whatever in high school. And I was like, you know what? Being a nerd is not a bad thing. That means I have passions. I have interests. I care about something. I'm like, I don't care. I'm good with this.
That's great to hear. I asked this because, there are some stereotypes about Miss America in general that just don't go with what you represent or what you stand for. Usually what I think people believe is that beauty queens are usually stupid. So how do you deal with such labels, nuclear nerd or beauty queens and etc.? What is your natural reaction to that?
Well, it's kind of fun because I am breaking stereotypes on both ends. Before I became Miss America, before all of this ever happened, when I tell people I'm a nuclear engineering student, typically they would just be like, oh, okay, all you do is sit in your room and code. And this was a big part of my branding going into Miss America, and a big part of the message I wanted to deliver is that is so frustrating when you meet someone and you learn one thing about them and all of a sudden that's the only thing that you perceive them to be. Because I always said, I represent the women who can. Not only am I a nuclear engineer, I'm also a classical violinist. I'm a competitive water skier. I love going to national parks and hiking, and my ideal weekend is camping in the middle of nowhere in the woods. There's just so much more depth to a person, and I wish people weren't so fast to judge. And this is specifically applies to women because I often find that when a woman has that high drive and that high ambition and is in a field like engineering, typically that just is the only label that she's allowed to have. And so with becoming Miss America, it's been really fun because that's something that's totally unexpected in terms of an engineer and a Miss America. What? But on terms of breaking the stereotypes on the Miss America side, I'm always running into that stereotype. And it's really fun because when people ask, they expect a very lighthearted, fun conversation. And they'll be like, oh, what are you majoring in college? And I'm like, oh, nuclear engineering. And they're always like, wait, what? Like they do a little bit of a double take and they're like, oh God, what? Did you just say nuclear engineering? But it honestly is a great conversation starter because these two demographics of Miss America and nuclear engineer has never really crossed before. It's allowed both of the programs to learn from each other and both of the industries to learn from each other. I think Miss America could use a little bit more of the structure that the nuclear industry has. I think the nuclear industry could use a little bit more of the PR lift that Miss America can offer. So it's been really, really
works perfectly
incredible.
Together.
Exactly.
Well, we heard your story about or how you decided to become nuclear engineer, but how or why did you decide to become Miss America? What made you go to the beauty pageant?
Oh, so Miss America is a scholarship organization. When I got into college, I realized college is expensive. This is unfortunately not free college here. I wish it was. But it's something that I ended up going for Miss America to help pursue scholarship opportunities to help pay for schooling. And additionally, it was a great opportunity to expand my platform in terms of advocacy and to help bring these two different demographics of people, one into the other. With nuclear, we tend to do a lot of internal conversations, but not a lot of outward facing conversations. So that's where I really pursued this as an opportunity to do that, in addition to helping pay for school.
Great. And you are happy with how it turned out, everything?
Yeah.
Well, I can imagine.
Yeah.
Now your voice or your platform to raise awareness and advocate for causes that you care about is unique, right?
Yes. Every Miss America has a different platform, a different passion project, a different thing to promote within her community. So for me, it's talking about our energy transition in America with an emphasis on nuclear. So I think that's got the biggest hurdles to overcome.
So at the beginning, you mentioned that you've been traveling a lot lately. Which countries have you visited?
Oh, well, I went to Europe for the first time in my life, which was very, very exciting.
Did you like it?
Yes, I did.
Which countries
y'all
did you
are
visit?
So relaxed.
Oh, we are? Are we? I mean, usually America.
Oh my gosh.
We usually hear that Americans are relaxed and that we are more, serious and unfriendly.
No, I guess unfriendliness is something that I'm like, okay, you go to New York City and there's people yelling at you no matter what you do. So unfriendliness is, I think we're all desensitized to it. But I was just like, oh wow, everyone's so chill here and relaxed and it was interesting. But I was in London for the World Nuclear Symposium. I was in Austria and Vienna for the International Atomic Energy Agency General Conference. And then I was in Paris for Roadmaps to New Nuclear. And I'll actually be back in Paris right after Thanksgiving. So at the end of November here for the World Nuclear Exhibition. And I'll also be going to Dubai in early December for COP28. And in between, I've also had the opportunity to go to Japan and South Korea. It's been really, really incredible to have this opportunity to do some international travel.
But you haven't been to Slovenia, right?
Not yet. It's on the list. It's a goal for 2024. I mean,
you're always welcome here, so please do come. We have a nuclear power plant, and I'm sure you'd like to see it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I would love to.
Yes, please do come. By the way, I'm quite curious, because Americans usually don't know about Slovenia, or they confuse us with Slovakia, or they think we are part of Soviet Union. So have you ever heard about Slovenia before, or is this your first time?
All right, so I'm gonna admit I also made the mistake of Slovakia. It was funny because I was talking to someone about this exchange of emails and stuff that we've had going on, and I was like, it's either Slovakia or Slovenia. I'm like, Slovakia, I know, but Slovenia is what I think it is, but I don't know Slovenia. So, but I've done some research on it. You guys seem like you have a really great culture and a very supportive and very community-based people, which I think is super cool. I think some of the best thing about visiting different places is seeing the different cultures and the different senses of community. And you guys seem like you have it, which is really, really cool.
Thank you. I feel honored. I mean, usually, we are very happy if people know Luka Doncic and Melania Trump. I mean, those are just two public figures that are known to Americans. But beside that, I mean, I'm sure you haven't heard about any of our nuclear experts, which is a shame, It would be really great because they have a lot to tell and they are very good at what they do. So when you come to Slovenia, please come and see nuclear power plant Krško and also Triger.
Yeah. Oh, you guys have a Triger reactor?
Yes, we have.
Love that. Okay, awesome.
You didn't know that, right?
No, I didn't know you guys had a Triger reactor.
Yeah.
We have one on the university campus that I go to that they use it for research and they teach the students to operate and everything. Oh. So that's really awesome.
So you study at your Triger reactor?
Yes. Yeah. We use it for some coursework and things like that, which is really neat. So,
but do you use it like every day or on a daily basis, on a weekly basis?
They have, so at University of Wisconsin-Madison, where I go, they have this reactor and it doesn't provide power to the school. It's primarily research purposes. They have student operators, which you can go through, become licensed to operate it, and then they end up working there. And the operation schedule does depend on like their student operator schedule. So I know like 2 years ago, they had 4 or 5 different student operators. So they were running it pretty much every weekday. Weekends were off because students just like weren't going to go into work on a Saturday or Sunday. But they try and run it as often as they can. With coursework, when I took the class to become licensed. I just never went through with the licensing process. The class though, I mean, we were in there pretty much every day, either learning about it or we were operating it ourselves during labs.
So, well, when you said you visited quite a lot of countries, have you also been to some other nuclear power plants around the world?
The only place I've been to a nuclear power plant was Japan. I haven't had a chance to see a European one yet, but that's on the list. I'm hoping to.
But like, can you explain to me? Because I don't know, but I would like to know. So how do different nuclear power plants differ from each other? So are they all the same or are there any differences between, I don't know, Japan nuclear power plant and American ones? What are like some basic distinctions?
Yeah, so it's really interesting because one, there is a lot of similarities between the two, which I think is super cool to see. I have seen 8 or 9 different power plants here in America, and there's one thing that I can say definitely is true in the Japanese power plants and Japanese nuclear industry as well. One, always on time. I think that's one of the best things about nuclear. We run on time, baby. You stick to that schedule, you stay true to it. Which is super awesome to see that translated like internationally.
Yeah, okay. I can say that this applies also to Slovenian ones. So
exactly. I love it. I'll never forget in Japan, we were running through a research facility. And when I say running, I mean like literally running. I had this man, he was like speed walking and I'm like, okay, I'm 5'11". I'm a very tall woman and the hallways were short and I'm in heels. So like I'm running like this. It was really interesting. But it was really awesome to see that. And then additionally, the priority for safety. I think it's different depending on where the power plant is. So like here in America, obviously we're a little bit bigger than Japan. We have a lot more space. And like in the Midwest where I'm from Wisconsin. So it's up by the Great Lakes is where I'm from and where I grew up. And, we don't really have to worry about tsunamis here in Wisconsin. So we don't really have to build seawalls. We can have these like lake tsunamis from the Great Lakes, but their maximum height is like 3 feet or 4 feet or something. So they're just small seawalls if the plant is on the coast of the Great Lakes. If it's not though, I mean like, I guess we have some tornado measures and things like that. Well, in Japan, the biggest thing that I noticed right away is they're prepared for the worst of earthquakes, the worst of the worst tornadoes, and the worst of the worst tsunamis. So like in America, we typically only have to worry about one type of natural disaster depending on the geography of the location of the power plant, versus in Japan, they have the risk of like every type of natural disaster that there is to exist, it seems like. So in that sense, like their safety measures were just a lot bigger. Additionally, after Fukushima Daiichi, all of their power plants were shut down, right? And they only could reopen if they all upped their safety measures intensely. Like there is an intense amount of safety and preparation for natural disasters at every single nuclear power plant that's operating now there. So it was awesome because you see this priority for safety that's true to both countries. The biggest difference is like you see Japanese power plants, they have just a preparation for literally everything versus here in America. You know, we don't have to prepare for everything. Down in Turkey Point in Florida, you know, that power plant doesn't have to prepare for blizzards and bad snow. But here in Wisconsin, we do, like, because we're prepared for that circumstance of having to deal with extreme icing and extreme wind or something like that. So it was really interesting to see how it just really depends on the geography of the area.
But do you think, or do you believe that people actually know that nuclear power plants are prepared to all of the possible disaster or events that can happen, or do they still think that nuclear power plants are dangerous?
People definitely, the general public, I would say, especially here in America, is still hesitant towards nuclear. People are open to it now more than ever, which I think is important to talk about, because I think within the nuclear industry, we often think people are closed off. People are open to learning about it. They just err on the side of no, because they're like, well, I've heard about Fukushima, I've heard about Chernobyl, I just don't really know how I feel about the whole thing. But I don't know a single person that has gone to a nuclear power plant, saw the safety measures firsthand, and walked out and still was like, yeah, no, I don't think this is good. You know, just because there is such a high level of preparation, and honestly, even just a conversation to show the safety measures and talk about the safety measures with, you know, there's always 3 methods of backup viewing. So like in the case of a station blackout, you know, we've got 3 different setups of accessing reading measurements and things like that in America, which is just like incredible. You don't see that in any other industry. I think airlines, like pilots, they have 2 methods, like 2 backup, like one. So your main one that you're usually using, and then the backup method of like controls and everything like that. But within a nuclear power plant, you've got 3 of them. So it's more prepared than like a pilot. And then on top of that, just in terms of the safety systems, which I won't get too technical with, like backup generators and all of the different sort of things that are also automated.
I mean, you can, but I can promise you I will understand everything. So
no, that's okay. I don't want to get too technical either for like listeners, because sometimes that just, you know, you go down a rabbit hole, but it is something that's really, really fascinating that I highly, highly recommend if you're concerned about safety. You know, it was, so I'm going to tell a story here.
Yes, please do. Please do.
It's going to sound super random. But in America here, there was a couple months ago over the summer that we had like a murderer escape a prison. Don't worry, this all ties in. So this murderer is like running around the woods of Pennsylvania, of eastern Pennsylvania, close to Philadelphia. And it was funny because I was getting ready to travel for Miss America, and I look at my schedule and I'm like, I'm going to Philadelphia. Like, oh, this is going to be fun. So I'm in the same area of this guy, and my dad is very, very concerned about safety. You know, he's an engineer. He gets it too. And he's like, okay, well, just like, he's like, are you going to be like in a safe location? I'm worried about this dude. You know, it was like, whatever, a dad being a dad. And I'm like, I'm sure it's going to be fine. I'm pretty sure I'm not going to run into like a murderer running around the woods. And honestly, though, I would rather be in a nuclear power plant than anywhere else in the world, just from a safety perspective, because not only do they have security to defend against the outside world, they also have so much set up internally that they're prepared. Like, it's just one of those things that the murderer was actually caught like 4 miles away from the power plant or something, about an hour before I got to the plant. But I was like, that's exactly where I would want to be if like a murderer was within 4 miles of me, you know? So it's one of those things that, it's a very roundabout story, but I think it delivers the point in a way where, you've got. So are you saying that
nuclear power plants are the safest place on Earth?
Oh, well, that's a big statement.
That's why I'm asking.
I have a feeling they are one of the safest, I'll say.
Okay, fair enough.
I don't know if I would say they are the safest, but they're one of many incredibly safe and secure locations that I personally feel very comfortable with, and I think it's really cool, both from like the technology side of things, but also just from everything they take into consideration literally everything when it comes to the security of a nuclear power plant.
Do people ever ask you if you're afraid of radiation?
People ask me if I'm glowing.
Oh,
I'm
yes.
like, do I look like I'm glowing?
I mean, I grew up next to a power plant, a nuclear power plant, and they also always ask me, are you glowing in the dark? No, I'm not. But I didn't realize that those stereotypes don't have like international borders, that this is also something that Americans ask.
Oh, yeah. We can thank The Simpsons for that one animated show here that like, it definitely just fed into all of those stereotypes. So I get that a lot where people are like, oh, I'm surprised you're not glowing or something. But honestly, when people ask about radiation, that's something that is literally all around us. You as a human being are radioactive in and of itself. Anytime you go to the dentist and get an x-ray, or you go to the doctor, get into an MRI machine or get an x-ray there, anytime you step out into the sunlight, you're getting exposed to radiation. If you're getting on a plane, you're getting a little bit extra radiation because you're higher up in elevation, so your exposure to cosmic rays are a little bit higher. So like there is radiation literally all around us, and we know how to handle it. We know how to track it. We know how to detect it. It's just like the science is there. The science is definitely there. I've been to so many power plants and worn so many dosimeters, the little trackers that tell you how much you've been exposed to. And I've never once felt in danger.
So, and for example, now that you visited at least a few nuclear power plants, do you, like in the near future, want to work on a power plant? Yeah. So, well, in a roundabout way. So what I'll be doing after Miss America concludes. So Miss America concludes January 14th is when I crown the next girl, and I'm kind of back on my own. I will be working for a company here in America called Constellation. They own and operate 12 different nuclear power plants across the country. And I'll be at the corporate level doing core design engineering. So kind of planning out these nuclear reactor cores, making sure they're nice and balanced and running efficiently, and all of that stuff, right? But then I will also be continuing advocacy work. So working on things in DC on the policy front, working with education and community outreach and community relations. But then, when it comes to working at a power plant specifically, I'm hoping I can be there during outages and everything like that. It's something that I definitely will be spending a lot of time at plants, but I won't be assigned to just one plant specifically because of the nature of the position. But do you have any like future plans, or not just plans, but maybe will you focus more on young people when it comes to nuclear, or will you focus more on older people? What is your which age group will you target?
It's kind of both, in all honesty, because right now, the people in office that are making these decisions for 2050 that are honestly changing the trajectory of these construction of these advanced new reactors, those are the people that are of the older generation. Let's be real. There's no 20-year-olds at national levels in, I'm pretty sure, any politics anywhere. Maybe I'm wrong. But I'm pretty sure that there's nothing along those lines. So working with the older generation to get support from the top level down is important. But then I also kind of say I attack it from both ends, where I'm working with young people and communities directly to get them excited to welcome in nuclear, to want nuclear, to say, hey, yeah, I do want a nuclear power plant in my backyard. It's safe, it's effective, it's reliable energy, it's high paying jobs for my kids to go into. It's millions of tax dollars into this community. So I know I'm going to have good roads, and I know I'm going to have great schools in this area, So a lot of kind of working at it from both ends there. And I think it's important because there is a disconnect sometimes from governmental levels and those local communities. So it's really neat to have this opportunity to sort of bridge them together to make sure that people in office right now are listening to the generation that's going to be working in these power plants 20 years from now. Because that's something that's got to be taken into consideration, is by the time these power plants are completed and online and ready to go, the people in office are not going to be the ones running them. And that's something that has been really awesome, to have this opportunity as a young person to have a seat at the table to talk about it from a young person's perspective.
And what do you usually say, or how do you usually present your point of view? What are the arguments that you are using? And especially,
it depends.
I know just one more question maybe. And how do you maybe persuade, or how do you influence younger generation to study engineering or to decide that this is like these are the high paying jobs and that it's safe? So what are your arguments for that?
Yeah. So first of all, when I'm talking to politicians and, having that seat at the table, a lot of it does depend on the circumstance. So like right now, I had spent some time in DC a couple of weeks ago pushing for the Advance Act to be included in the NDAA, and then also pushing for the Nuclear Fuel Security Act here in America. That's just a good domestic policies specifically to talk about and specifically to focus on that sort of stuff. But it honestly does depend on the environment. So like at the international level, a lot of the approach that I take is saying, listen, okay, let's talk about workforce, because I'm not like the biggest nuclear expert in the world. By no means am I anywhere even close to that. But what I can say is that young people, they want to support a mission, and we need to make sure that nuclear has a clear, defined mission, not just in America, but internationally, because nuclear truly is a community that we need everybody to succeed. It's not just one country. We need everybody that's building nuclear, that's participating in nuclear to succeed, which is really unique. You don't have that in any other type of industry. Now, when I'm talking to young people, honestly, what I do is make nuclear cool. I think we had a bad PR stretch for a while.
Okay, but how do you do that? I mean, what do you tell them?
Yeah, well, a lot of it is just making sure that they know what nuclear actually is. Because like you had said, when I saw nuclear engineering, I had no idea what it was. I had no idea what a nuclear engineer does. And I want to make sure that it's clear, we have this whole saying in nuclear that a boring day is a good day, which is true. A boring day is a good day. That's how we want a power plant to be running. We want it to be boring, nothing exciting happening, right? But at the same time, when you look at the broad scope of nuclear, especially here in America, there are so many cool innovations going on. So small modular reactors are a huge thing. Micro reactors are a huge development right now, where literally there's a couple of DoD contracts right now, Department of Defense contracts, where they want to get a nuclear power plant essentially to fit inside of a shipping container. So they can just drive it out to Army camps, set it down there, use that to power the Army camps, rather than shipping diesel generators back and forth and bringing out diesel gas. And then from there, if you want to do deep space exploration, great. We're using nuclear power for that now. That's the thing, that nuclear has so many different applications. If you want to go cure cancer, you can literally go cure cancer by studying nuclear medicine. And I think it's something that by showing where nuclear already is today and what the future holds, I think that's something that gets people excited about it. A lot of what we saw in Star Trek and Star Wars is happening and is being achieved through nuclear science. Like these massive, massive ships in the Navy are being powered by nuclear energy, right? And that's something that you don't really see in any other industry, that capability to do it in an effective and safe manner.
So you mentioned before that nuclear needs clear mission and statement. Do you think we have done the first steps towards it?
I think we're on the path for it right now. I think we're really seeing the effects of not just my work, but all of these different people that are advocating for it internationally, in Australia and South Africa, here in America, literally everywhere across the world. And we're seeing the importance of making sure that there is a clear, supported, educated message out there about nuclear, making sure it's coming from a credible source. I especially here in America, after 3 Mile Island, we kind of just removed ourselves from media, which let all of these uneducated opinions and thoughts and, all of these animations go wild with whatever they wanted. Every supervillain in every movie ever was created by radiation. Look at Godzilla, look at the Hulk, look at all of these things. And there's very few positive representations. That's now changing, both in terms of media, in terms of movies. Iron Man, his little core piece is a little miniature nuclear thing. So we're seeing a lot more positive representation now, and it's coming from an educated source as well, where there's plenty of opportunities to connect with international nuclear experts, right? We have a TikTok influencer here in America that he's a professor at a university and he's one of the greatest people in the world to answer questions. And now that's an opportunity where people from Europe can do that. People from Asia, people from South America, from wherever in the world. We have that ability to connect and use social media for that power of education and learning from credible sources. And that's something that I encourage everybody to do. I encourage everybody to reach out and find those influencers. There's so many out there. I can send a list if you want, that provide that important education.
And probably everybody can contribute in this community, right? You don't have to be a nuclear expert to spread like positive word about nuclear. You just have to be, just have to be passionate about it, or you just have to have some general knowledge and positive, like feelings towards it, right?
Well, exactly. And that's something that even for me, I'm still a student, right? I'm still learning. I'm still going through this process, yet I am definitely comfortable talking about this on a public facing front, on social media, to politicians, to anyone and everyone. It's about sharing that passion, sharing your experience, sharing your story. I always say, like, my goal as Miss America isn't to change the whole world. All I need to do is change one person's world, right? All I need to do is make one connection in a room. And that, like, for a nuclear pun here, all you got to do is be the neutron that starts the chain reaction. Like that's all you need in order to make this all happen. So that's the biggest thing, where share that passion, start these conversations, talking about electricity, talking about affordable, reliable, accessible electricity. And nuclear is one of those things to be addressing.
Would you say that you have already achieved the goal?
Yes, for sure. I would hope so. After, like over 100,000 people of interactions, and on social media, it's been incredible because I haven't had a ton of time to focus on social media this year, but even just like a short Instagram reel about a cooling tower and saying like the steam that comes out of it is just steam. It's just water vapor. People don't know that. And it ended up getting over 5 million views. Like that's something that shows that people are curious. They want to know, they want to learn, they want to consume this knowledge. What we have to do is provide that opportunity. Okay,
great. Grace, let me give you one last question, and this is regarding your future plans. So, as Miss America and as a nuclear engineer, maybe not just like in the next few years, but also like, what is your mission? So we discussed already like nuclear mission, but what is your mission? What do you want to do? What do you want to be? I'm not going to say when you grow up because you're a grown up.
Well, I still feel like I'm growing up. So,
well, we are every day, right?
Yeah.
But what is your mission?
I think it's funny. I have like a tentative direction of what I want to do with my life, but I always think it's important to keep doors open. Opportunities always present themselves, and those plans always, always, always change. If you asked me the same question a year ago, I would not have become Miss America on the agenda. That was not on the agenda at all, and that completely changed the trajectory of my life overall. So in that sense, I really do want to be an engineer and focus on this advocacy work. I want to continue educating people about this awesome, awesome technology and this incredible science that I literally believe will cure cancer and will help provide reliable, clean energy to the entire world. And for me personally, those are the biggest things. I want to see the general public support nuclear, accept nuclear, and be excited about nuclear. That's my main overall mission in life, that I think no matter what opportunities present themselves, that will always be the driving force.
Well, Grace, that is very nice to hear. And I wish you all the luck with all of your future plans. And again, please do come to Slovenia. You are welcome here. We will show you around.
Awesome. I'll definitely try. I really do want to make it out there.
Yes, but please make sure you arrive to Slovenia, not Slovakia, right?
All right, will do. I got you.
Capital city is Ljubljana.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Putting it in my calendar right now.
Yes,
2024.
Please do.
Awesome.
Grace,
thank you so much.
Thank you. It was a true pleasure. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Drage poslušalke, poslušalci, hvala, da ste z nami ostali do konca epizode. Če vam je bila vsebina všeč, bomo veseli vaše podpore, deljenja in všečkov na družbenih omrežjih. Najdete nas na Facebooku, X-u oziroma Twitterju in Instagramu. Veseli bomo vaših odzivov in komentarjev. Vse novice, zanimivosti in razlage sveta jedrske energije pa najdete združene na spletnem mestu www.jedrska.si.